Hello everybody, and welcome once again to the Mission Log. My name is Jason Gilbert, and I, like you, am a fellow Trekkie. If this is your first time here, a special welcome to you. What we're hoping to accomplish here is to go through every Star Trek adventure ever filmed, starting with the original series, all the way to the shows airing this present day. In addition to a synopsis of the story, I give a review of the episode and I score it. And throughout each video, I try to throw in some interesting facts concerning the episode. Would you please go ahead and subscribe to this channel? It would really help me out immensely. And if you like the content, please give it a thumbs up and share this with your Trekkie friends, as I would love to see this channel grow. Today we're going to be reviewing Season 1, Episode 7 of the original series titled, What Are Little Girls Made Of? It aired on October the 29th, 1966. The episode was written by Robert Bloch. It was directed by James Goldstone, and the producer was the series creator, Gene Roddenberry. So without any further ado, let's get into this story. As the Enterprise goes into orbit around the planet EXO III, Kirk speaks with Nurse Chapel. Chapel says, "I know he's down there," and she is referring to a man that she was once engaged to named Dr. Roger Korby, and it has been 5 years since he has last communicated with Starfleet. Uhura has been trying to reach him on the planet, and after several attempts, Dr. Korby hails the ship, and then we fade into the title sequence. As the episode resumes, we are privy to a captain's log, and we discover that Dr. Korby stayed alive by retreating to the underground ruins that were left behind by the planet's original inhabitants. Kirk tells Korby that he's preparing a landing party to beam down, and very strangely, Korby asks him to come down alone. Kirk said there would be two. Chapel speaks to her ex-fiance, and Korby was very excited to hear from her and invited her to accompany Kirk. And so Kirk and Chapel beam down, and they materialize in a cavern, and no one is there to greet them. Kirk calls up to the ship and orders that 2 security men beam down. Moments later, 2 security men materialize. They begin looking for Korby, and as they do, Chapel almost falls off a ledge in the cavern. Finally, a bright light shines on them, and we see an outline of a man. And when he becomes clearer, we find out that it isn't Korby, but it's his assistant, who Chapel knows, but strangely, the assistant doesn't recognize her. We then hear a scream, and one of Kirk's security men had fallen off a ledge and fell to his death. The first time in the series where we see a man with a red shirt die. We then see a large alien spying on them, and he is responsible for the death of the security officer. Korby's assistant explains that Korby couldn't be there because he was detained. We then see the same alien encroach on the other security officer and kill him. 2 red shirt security men killed within minutes of each other. The assistant leads them to Korby's quarters. They meet a young lady there named Andrea. Finally, Korby shows up, and he and Chapel embrace each other in a deep embrace and kiss. We then see that Captain Kirk tries to communicate with the security officers, but is unsuccessful because they have died. Korby's assistant holds up a phaser and said that there would be no contact. Andrea tries to take Kirk's phaser, and he rolls out of the way and shoots Korby's assistant. And it's then that the alien walks in and attacks Kirk. We then see that the assistant was not a man after all, but he was an android. On the ship, Spock receives a report from Kirk However, it was the alien who has disguised his voice to sound like Kirk, indicating that he too is an android. Spock thinks that something is wrong. Korby wants to have a conversation with Kirk, and he asks for 24 hours to convince him of his work on this planet. Kirk tries to make a run for it, but the large android, whose name is Brock, stops him. Now, in another room, Andrea and Chapel are speaking, and Chapel shows some signs of jealousy, but demands to know where Kirk is. It is then that Korby walks into the room with Kirk and says that he will not allow Kirk to report to the ship. And it's here where we discover that Andrea is also an android. Chapel questions Korby to see if he's in love with the android, and to demonstrate that the androids have no emotions, he orders Andrea to kiss Kirk, and then he orders her to strike Kirk, and she slaps him. There's no emotional response in her at all. Kirk wants to know if these androids obey only him, and asks why 2 of his men were killed. We then see Brock putting a human-shaped substance onto a machine. Kirk also is placed on the machine, and Korby says this is how you make an android. We see Kirk repeating a very strange line. I'm sick and tired of your half-breed interference. He repeats it over a few times. Now the machine spins, and as it does, an android duplicate of Kirk appears on the machine. Very cool effect for 1966. Chapel then sits down to dinner as Andrea serves her, and Captain Kirk walks in. He's in a conversation with Chapel, and then he reveals that he is an android. Korby walks in with the real Kirk. We then see the 2 Kirks together, no doubt the same special effects as the episode The Enemy Within, but this time it's done much better. The real Kirk is testing android Kirk's knowledge of his life. Korby orders the android to leave, and it is here where Korby reveals his intentions to Captain Kirk. He wants to put consciousness in the androids, and in that way, a human could have immortality through the android. Kirk said that what he is offering the universe is programming, no different than what evil dictators from the past have done. Korby said that he wants Kirk to help him get to a colony planet where there is raw materials. Now, while speaking, Kirk is unwinding a rope from his chair, and he uses it to choke Korby and then get away. And Korby orders Brock to go after Kirk. A chase in the cave takes place. Kirk running, Brock chasing him, and Chapel running after Brock, shouting an order to him to not harm Captain Kirk. Kirk breaks off a chunk of rock to defend himself against the android, and it's here where Brock uses Chapel's voice to deceive him. Kirk tries to attack him, but Brock shoves him off, causing Kirk to hang on the edge of a precipice. Brock then heeds Chapel's orders to not harm Kirk, and he pulls Kirk to safety. Android Kirk is beamed aboard the Enterprise. Spock inquires as to what the captain is up to, and the android says, I'm sick and tired of your half-breed interference. The exact same thing that Kirk said when he was on the android machine. Spock seemed to pick up that signal. He was okay with it, knowing that it was a distress signal from the captain and that this Kirk was an imposter. Now, after the android leaves, Spock gets on the communicator and orders a security landing party be assembled to beam down after Kirk beams down. Now, on the planet, we see Andrea looking in on Kirk. He asks her to kiss him. They kiss, and it seems to have confused the android. Brock comes in, Kirk suggests that the builders made the android machines too perfect, so much so that pure logic is too frustrating for them. And Kirk is trying to turn Brock against Korby, and it is working. Brock is coming against Korby, and so Korby destroys him with a phaser blast. Kirk attacks Korby and damages his hand, revealing that Korby himself is an android. He tries to convince Chapel that he is the same Roger, and at that point Korby receives an intruder alert, Spock's landing party, so he orders Andrea to find them and to protect, in other words, to kill them. As she leaves, android Kirk sees her, and she tries to kiss him, and he pushes her away, and so with her phaser she destroys him. She comes in to report and is confused when she sees the real Kirk. She has killed one of her own. Kirk confronts Korby about what he has done and about how the androids are now going around killing each other. Korby is now overloading. Kirk asks him for the phaser, and reluctantly Korby gives it to him. Andrea walks up to Korby and asks to kiss him, and he says to her, "You cannot love because you are not human." He then takes her phaser and destroys them both. And at that point, Spock's security team comes in. Back on the ship, the Enterprise is leaving orbit. We see Chapel speaking to Kirk, and she says, "Thank you for letting me decide. I think I made the right decision." And at that point, Spock comes over and Kirk tells him that she's staying with the ship. Spock is a little troubled by Kirk's half-breed comment and said that it was unsophisticated. Kirk said that he would do better if he were ever in a similar situation. They both smiled at each other, and the ship goes off to the next mission. I thought that the episode was solid. It was certainly much better than their previous outing, Mudd's Women. Now, the title of the episode comes from the little poem, What Are Little Girls Made Of? And of course, the answer is sugar and spice and everything nice. However, in this episode, the girl, the female android, was made up of wires, circuits, batteries, and everything that is associated with a computer. Now, the idea of robots and androids is not, even at 1966, was not a new concept. That idea is as old as the genre of science fiction itself. So in that respect, this episode is not covering any new ground, although it is definitely new to Star Trek. Where it differs, however, is that this episode considers the negative factors of it. Dr. Korby felt that his motives were altruistic. He really felt that he was helping humanity by creating an outlet for human consciousness to live on forever, even after a person dies, through an android that is an exact duplicate. However, as the episode carried on, it showed that even duplicates are individuals, and they turned away from their original intent and killed each other off. It's a good lesson to be learned here that you cannot impose your will on another. It is wrong in every sense of the word. Unfortunately, humanity does not learn their lessons because over and over we have seen dictators rise and imposing their will over their people and oppressing them. So in those respects, I felt the episode did well. On the other hand, for a science fiction show, the episode was very simple. It is the only episode where Chapel gets featured in a primary role. Throughout the series, she does make appearances, but not as much as in this episode. I felt at times that the dialogue was weak in certain spots. It felt like the episode was rushed to make the air date. Also, the kissing scenes were way over the top. You know, when Andrea is first ordered to kiss Kirk, At that point, he's angry because they've been subdued, they've been duped, they've been tricked. Yet when she's ordered to kiss him, there's no restraint. He puckers up and kisses her and then goes right back to being angry. In their second kissing scene, he kisses her so hard that her lipstick is all over him, and he holds her so tight that you can see his fingerprints on her arms. So it's quite over the top. Also in this episode, the props were cheesy. Kirk resorted to using a piece of rock, which was an oddly shaped piece of styrofoam. And I have to say, had he used the Shatner chop, he would have no doubt subdued the android. One other negative aspect that I'll share. Where is Bones? Where is Scotty? Where is Sulu? Their absence was very noticeable. And Spock had very little to do with this episode, and it's unfortunate. So I give What Are Little Girls Made Of 3 out of 5 Starfleet insignias for awesomeness. Well, I want to thank you for joining me this week for my review of What Are Little Girls Made Of, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I would love to read your thoughts on this episode. Please feel free to leave a comment. All I ask is that we be respectful of each other and that we keep our comments profanity free. Also, please check out my Instagram page. Search for @TrekMissionLog and you'll find me there. And please subscribe to this channel. I invite you to join me next week as I review the episode titled Miri. I hope that you have a great week. Until next time, live long and prosper.